Good morning, everyone. I have right at 10:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for joining this morning's Beef Brunch Educational Series webinar. My name is Ashley Edwards. I'm a livestock agent in the Central, Northwest, and Northeast regions for the LSU AgCenter. I will be hosting today with the help of Jason Holmes, who is also one of our speakers. Jason is a livestock specialist in the Northeast region. He will be joined by Mr. Persica, who is the LSU Meat Science Laboratory Manager and a lecturer for the School of Animal Sciences at LSU. We are taking on a slightly different format for our webinar today. We wanted to be able to demonstrate carcass characteristics and break down into different primal and retail cuts. In order to do that, Jason and I met with Boo last month, and we filmed a few short videos with the help of Mr. Craig Gotro in our communications department. So we're going to do our best to show you these videos during this live event today. All of that being said, please realize that you can expect about a 30 to 45 second lag time between when we finish speaking and when the videos begin playing. So this time will depend a little bit based on your internet speed, but please have some patience with us in this. I really think the content is definitely worth the short delay. If you are watching the recorded version of this, my plan is to cut out that delay so it should run smoothly through. Just a few more housekeeping notes that we go over on all of these webinars. Please realize we're going to be muting all of your microphones, and we ask that you please keep them muted throughout the webinar. If you're joining us online through the Teams app or the link, please enter your questions into the Q&A box at any time during the presentation. So again, if you're online with us, you can find the Q&A box and direct any questions there. If you are calling in and listening to us over your phone, you can text your questions to me. My number is 512-818-5476. So again, if you're calling in and listening to us, you can text your questions at any time during the webinar to me. That number is 512-818-5476. In the interest of time, we are going to wait to answer our questions until the end of the presentation. So I'm going to let Jason get us started today with a little bit of an overview on our topic, beef for the holidays.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good morning so far, and we appreciate y'all tuning in with us as we talk a little bit about beef today, and we'll touch on also a little bit about what some of those cuts that you might lean on or look forward to over the holidays and the time to get out and cook a little bit, because as we all know, we love to eat in Louisiana. So before we get into some of these videos, what I wanted to do is touch on just a few things about how beef ties back into everything that we do from the cow-calf sector through the handling of that product. We have to stop and remember that we are producing a product that we want consumers to have a positive experience whenever they consume. And we as cow-calf producers are the first step in ensuring that we are providing that high quality product. So if you've watched any of these webinars in the past, we've spent a good bit of time talking about just production management practices in terms of reproduction. Well, if you'll see on this slide here, one of the very first things that's in a yellow box, if you follow the progression of the arrows, is genetics. We cannot affect too much in terms of reproduction with genetics. I mean, we can, but in terms of whenever we talk about highly heritable traits, those reproductive traits are not highly heritable. However, whenever we're trying to get to a high quality carcass, which converts to a high quality eating experience for the consumer, we know that those traits are highly heritable. So that tells me that we have an excellent opportunity on the cow-calf side whenever we're looking at genetics of our herd to be the first step in producing that high quality carcass, which in terms hopefully converts to that positive eating experience, whether it's on a restaurant plate or if it's a product that we're purchasing in the grocery store. So handling, slaughter, chilling, processing, all of those are the steps to get from that calf being produced on a cow-calf producer's operation all the way around to that steak or that roast or that hamburger, whatever it may be that we're consuming as a consumer. So as we go through this today, I just hope that you'll pay close attention to some of the things that Boo will be talking about in terms of carcass qualities and yields, and how we have to be able to tie that back into what we're doing as cow-calf producers. Because at the end of the day, we are producing beef. We are cow-calf producers, but we have to remember that we are producing a food product in terms of beef. So with that, Ashley, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, we're going to see if I can do this smoothly. So we have our first video, and this is where Boo's going to go through carcass breakdown and quality and yield. So again, please realize.
All right, guys.
I'm sorry. Please realize that there might be a 30 to 45 second delay before the video starts playing. Jason, are you able to see?
Yes, ma'am.
You can see Boo with the carcass there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to hit play. Again, have a little bit of patience, and hopefully we will get this going.
When we start talking about quality in beef carcasses, it's kind of a function of a few different things. One of the most important aspects that goes into beef quality is genetics. But ideally, the phenotype is a combination of genetics and then the environment. Environment being everything else that goes into it. Management of the livestock, feeding programs that they're on, the health regimen that they're going through. So those two things combined produce the animal, which results in, hopefully, a high quality product. Things that go into the way that they put quality on or become high quality products, animals will fatten as they're going through their growth curve and they're being fed from front to back. So from the very head towards the tail, and then that fat distribution will start to go from the top of their body towards the lower third. So you'll get a fan type distribution where the fat starts at the neck and goes back and down at the same time. That's why cuts from the front of the fork or the animal have more marbling and more seam fat, and round cuts are generally going to be a little bit more lean. Now, another function of quality when we talk about
Okay, we're going to try this one more time in just a second. I'm going to try to restart it, and if it doesn't work, then we will resort to another option. Give me just a moment.
All right, guys, when we start talking about quality in beef carcasses, it's kind of a function of a few different things. One of the most important aspects that goes into beef quality is genetics. But ideally, the phenotype is a combination of genetics and then the environment. Environment being everything else that goes into it. Management of the livestock, feeding programs that they're on, the health regimen that they're going through. So those two things combined produce the animal, which results in, hopefully, a high quality product. Things that go into the way that they put quality on or become high quality products, animals will fatten as they're going through their growth curve and they're being fed from front to back. So from the very head towards the tail, and then that fat distribution will start to go from the top of their body towards the lower third. So you'll get a fan type distribution where the fat starts at the neck and goes back and down at the same time. That's why cuts from the front of the fork or the animal have more marbling and more seam fat, and round cuts are generally going to be a little bit more lean. Now, another function of quality, when we talk about quality grade, marbling in the loin eye, which we'll discuss in a second, how much marbling is there is going to be one of the best indicators of quality. We're going to look at the color of the lean, because the color of the lean indicates a more acceptable, more palatable type product. As animals get older, the lean gets darker. So most of the times, dark colored lean indicates maybe an animal that's a little bit older phenotypically. We're not talking about days of age, we're talking about phenotypically. Also, it could be an indication if they had some kind of stress event or something to the effect prior to the harvesting aspect. The other thing is maturity. So most people can give me a date. This calf was born on January 20th or whatever. But we're talking about phenotypic maturity, phenotype, physiological maturity. Not all animals grow at the same rate. We've all been witness of that. And so we tell that mostly by looking at the amount of ossification in the bone. Now, kind of the opposite of the way they lay on fat as they grow, the bone ossification starts towards the sacral region first. So you'll see hard bone in the sacral tail region prior to throughout the thoracic area. So when we rib the beef carcass, we're doing two things. We're exposing this ribeye so we can determine how much quality is actually there. Is that score that we got on the ultrasound panning through actually in the live animal? And then also we can tell these buttons, these last 3 to 4 buttons, which if you can see this button right here, this cartilage, we call it a button on the thoracic vertebrae. As an animal gets older, this becomes hard bone. Hence the name C and D cattle, hard bone. They don't have any buttons left. In young animals, if we see these buttons right here, this animal's still in A maturity, probably A80, A90. That just means when we combine the quality grade marbling score and his maturity score based off of the amount of bone that we have left, we look at a chart, we can tell he's choice, prime, whatever he is, compared to how these two things play out. You have to know that the grader on the line has 4 seconds to do this. They're going down the line, but they've seen enough of them. They look at that, A maturity, we're not worried about anything else. Then they go to the color and the quality of lean. Lastly, and not leastly, the texture of the lean is important. Finer textured muscle is more tender than coarser textured muscle. That is also somewhat of a genetic trait, and the way that the animals grow. So those three things kind of go into the quality grading aspect. Quality grade is one function of it. It's a big function of the price of cattle. If you sold cattle on a grid, you know that it's based off kind of where they quality grade, right? We're looking for choice cattle that are going to be yield grade 3s. So quality grade, how palatable is that product? Is the consumer going to enjoy it? Yield grade, on the other hand, we're looking at the amount of fat to lean ratio, cutability. How much product do we actually have? And that's why you see these big discounts in yield grade 4s and 5s. The more fat, as you look at this animal, the longer he's on feed, and he's building these big patches of fat along in here, getting a lot of seam fat, intermuscular fat, not intramuscular fat's the marbling. Intermuscular fat's going to be in the seams between the muscles. And we'll show you some indications of that when we make some of these retail cuts. Yield grade is how much product we can produce. So we look at the size of the loin eye, the overall size of the carcass. We're going to look, and you hear a lot about kidney, heart, and pelvic fat. It's an indicator of it because the internal fat is the first layer of fat that the animal will put on as he's starting to go through the feeding process. And so how much actual kidney fat behind this loin and where this kidney region is, pelvic fat, which has been trimmed out, and then heart fat. Those things go into the equation and give us a yield grade. Ideally, we're looking for yield grade 3s, 2s, or 1s, and then higher quality grades. So we have a graded carcass. This is a high choice carcass, yield grade 3.5. The next thing we have to do is we need to break this into primals. All right, so we'll talk about the primals of the beef carcass first. On the forequarter, all right, what will happen is we'll take this foreshank and brisket off, okay, to about right here. So you have the brisket foreshank area. We would separate the chuck from the rib, wholesale rib. 1, 2, 3, 4 ribs. We will make a cut through here and through the plate. So that's going to give us a wholesale rib, primal rib, right here. Then you have, this would be separated from the hind quarter, where that fork comes through, that cut comes here. You have the plate. All right, so plate, rib, chuck, brisket, foreshank. Those are kind of combined. That's the primal cuts, the basic cuts that come off the forequarter. On the hind quarter, we're going to move up. I need something to point with. We'll have the flank. Let me turn this. The flank will come off about right here. It'll come down below this portion around. It'll turn and it'll come in right below the loin. It's a short loin. So we have this would all be the flank right here. We would separate it right there at the tip of the round. We'd come around, peel this back, and that will expose our short loin. Okay, we'd have a cut coming in here. We'd have our short loin. Then you'd have the sirloin region. From there, everything above this up is the round, the wholesale round. And we can break all of those different primals into many different retail cuts. All right, guys, so we have a forequarter broken into wholesale cuts or primal cuts right here. This is what the butcher is going to use to make the final product, the retail cuts. Before we get into making cuts, let's just go over a few things about yield grade and quality grade one more time. Remember, the animal puts on fat front to back. So this is the neck, this is the midpoint of that forequarter. The loin would start going towards the round this way. Also, they'll put on kidney, heart, and pelvic fat first. So you'll see I have some heart fat left on this plate right here. This is all thrown away. Anything that comes off of this carcass and goes in a barrel is the loss of yield. So it adds to the yield grade. 1 is the most desirable, 4 is the least desirable. Likewise, the layers of fat that go on there, we'll start building this intermuscular fat, not intra, but intermuscular fat, this seam fat we've all kind of seen in some cuts. In the forequarter, you're going to have more seam fat because of the way they put fat down and the types of muscles that are there. The forequarter is smaller bunches of muscles that are used more for steering and stabilization. So you'll see all these different segments of muscles, where when we get to the hind quarter, you're going to see fewer muscles that are larger and more powerful because that's the locomotion aspect of the animal. Less seam fat in the hind quarter than you have in the forequarter. Ideally, though, you get more moisture out of this with all this fat. So looking at the blade portion of this chuck, you can see all these different seams. If we're looking at the primal rib, which is the most valuable cut out of this whole thing, maybe close to the brisket. Brisket's getting pretty popular, but on the blade end, you can see all the different separation. And then when you get to the rib end or the loin end, one solid muscle with maybe a cap muscle there, very few seams of fat. So that's what goes into yield grade when we're looking at these cuts. Some things that we can do right quick. We'll talk about the plate first. We'll get this kind of out the way. So we have this wholesale plate. This is just the rib portion. The ribs that were removed from the bottom of the wholesale rib. We will cut these into a couple different cuts, mostly 2 that are really important. The first one, I've kind of already removed this connective tissue is right here, but you can pull this diaphragm out. The diaphragm could be utilized as skirt steak, good for making fajitas. It comes out real easy. You remove this other layer of connective tissue. This one's a little bit more tender because these cattle have been aging for 3 weeks. So you got to be a little careful in the industry. These are removed probably day 2 where you don't lose so much of it. Take this. This one's not the best specimen. Square it up. You'll see them in a grocery store, kind of as skirt steak, pinwheels maybe they used to call them, fajita meat, right there. Season it, cook it whole, and then cut across the grain to make your fajitas. Other than that, we have a piece on the tail portion of this plate. This would be the flat half brisket. We'll debone that, pull the flat half brisket off of this, then we will take this plate, put it on the bandsaw, make cuts, basically long right here, come back along right here. This would be your short ribs that you can sell, and then we'll pull the remaining tissues out right here that go into trim for ground meat.
Okay, so before we get started on our next video, Boo is on with us. And Mr. Boo, I want you, if you don't mind, talk for just a minute about if we have somebody sitting there at the meat counter and they're trying to decide maybe between 2 different steaks of the same cut, so 2 different ribeyes or 2 different sirloins, or even maybe 2 chuck roasts. They know what cut they want, but they're trying to decide exactly which tray pack to buy. What tips do you have for them, outside of marbling, what tips do you have for them when they go to actually select exactly which cut it is they're going to purchase?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and to help with this program. When it comes to selecting certain cuts, especially like if you're getting into steaks, as I talked about a little bit in the video earlier, marbling, yeah, right, is king. We know that. We want something with a lot of marbling. We're going to get moisture and flavor and juiciness from it. However, the type of cut that you're looking for is going to be based off of a few other things. I like to look at the texture of the muscle, and I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you about looking at the texture and muscle, but if you look at where that cut was made, so you're looking at that steak, and if it looks like the muscle's just really smooth in appearance, it's got finer texture, it's probably going to give you a little bit better eating experience. Everything else kind of being equal. Obviously, if they've been aged a little bit, we can age some of that toughness out of larger textured type animals. But we want to look at the texture. Color is another thing that you want to look at. A bright cherry red appearance is something that's probably most appealing to most folks. However, it's not uncommon for them to be out a day maybe or 2 on the shelf. The lights kind of play a little role in increasing that oxidation and giving it that darker, grayer color. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad product or unsafe, unhealthy product to eat. It's just probably had a little bit more light exposure. So you can look, make sure there's not a lot of purge or any moisture in the package, and you're good to go. And a lot of times, sometimes they'll discount those. You look, they're a day or 2, they're going to cut a little price on them. As far as what cut, ribeye versus T-bone versus sirloin, that's kind of an individual preference thing. You're going to have more marbling more towards the ribeye cuts, and as they go down through the loin and towards the sirloin, you get a little bit less of that fat. So the flavor profile will change a little bit right there. However, it's just kind of a personal preference. I know people that prefer sirloin over ribeyes, and vice versa. The main thing is if it's good packaged product, free of a lot of purge, and when I say purge, you don't see a lot of moisture in the package, then it's probably going to be a pretty good eating experience. And it will be labeled, in the grocery stores, those products are going to be labeled for if it's choice or select or prime or whatnot. that kind of answer the question?
Yes, sir, that's perfect. And that leads us right into our next video. So if you'll just bear with me 1 second, let me swap back. And the next video that we have is an interview between Jason and Mr. Vu talking about the different cuts that you can select for your meals. And so that's what we've got here to kind of round out our webinar. We will jump back on with you and answer any questions that you have. So just a reminder, you can text your questions to me or put them in the Q&A box. But here's an interview between Jason and Boo as they start going through different cuts that you can select for your meals.
Boo, we've covered a lot of territory today, talking briefly a little bit about genetics and how that plays a role in the overall product that the consumers are picking up at the grocery store, they're sitting down at a restaurant table to enjoy. We've talked about carcass quality, we've talked about yield grades and how we determine those whenever that carcass is going through the plant in front of the graders, how we get to those points. Covered the wholesales. So what I want to do now is let's put this into perspective in terms of whenever we get ready to sit down during the holidays at a restaurant table or at the family table, just in terms of that overall high quality eating experience. I mean, in Louisiana, we like to eat.
Right.
We like good food. We love to eat. So we've kind of got these laid out in a progression order. Just some of the cuts or the retail cuts that we think will probably provide some of that high quality eating experience. So we'll start down here on the brisket end, and we'll just talk about each one of those in terms of what we think is a good way to try to prepare those for a holiday meal, and the ones that we think are going to give you that really good quality eating. So let's just start down there on that end with the brisket there, Boo, and we'll work our way down the table.
So absolutely, we have this brisket, and it's what I'd call mostly trimmed. I like to leave a little bit of extra fat on there because this is the point half, of course, and this is the fatter of the two halves. This is where the moisture and the flavor comes through. If you get that flat half where there's not as much of that cover on it, that's the more health conscious brisket, if we can say those two things in the same sentence. But so this is something that, you know, low heat. Ideally, it's probably in a smoker or a pit or something like that. However, I mean, you can do it in an oven. I can give a shout out to my mother-in-law. She does a great brisket, and it's in the oven. It's never hits grill, and you can't tell. But it's something that has moisture in it. It has flavor in it, and it has a little bit of volume to it. You can feed a lot of people with it.
So something you can take and prepare like at Thanksgiving and enjoy it for a couple of weeks after. I mean,
right.
You can enjoy the brisket, slice it up.
Yep.
You can take that down the road 4 or 5 days later, chop it up, make some really good
sandwiches.
Yep. Out of it. Absolutely.
Yep. So it's something that, you know, you'll see a lot of that going around this time of year in the holiday time when you're having a lot of folks. And you know, remember that if you like brisket and you do have a small family, not only what Jason's saying, you have a lot of product that you can eat longer, but you can also get smaller portions to where you can cook it just for everyday eating. Now, we'd be remiss without talking about something cooked in a gravy of some kind in Louisiana. We do like to eat something with gravy. This cut, remember we cut out, this came off the top portion of that blade, and this is the mock tender. It's not tender, and so ideally you're gonna cut this either into a steak of some sort. You can make chunks for stew meat. You could pot roast it like it is, season it, maybe stuff it, and pot roast it like it is. But this is also something that you're going to have to give a little bit of time and some attention to break down the connective tissue and of course muscle bundles that's in it. But it lends itself really good to making gravies and something to that effect. Not real large, right? So it's not a huge piece, but you can get multiple ones, and they're not very expensive. They're not very expensive.
Whenever we were taking down the carcass a while ago, you had that flat iron laying up there, and you had my mouth watering, because that's in my mind, if you want to cut a beef that's got a really high quality beef flavor, and I guess that's why I like strip steaks and some of those things, or sirloins, because you get that really good high quality beef flavor.
That heavy flavor, yep.
That right there has got a really good beef flavor.
So when you look at the flat iron steak, and this one, you know, remember there's two, so I had to pull a piece of connective tissue out of it. It was kind of thick. So this one ended up being a touch thinner than I preferred. But when you look at the flat iron, you can just see that it's full of marbling. And you know, guys, that's where the flavor's at in beef, is in that marbling. You do have a very tender product here. It's something that you know you're going to watch the heat. I like high heat with this, but I want to keep this at that rare, maybe medium rare stage. So you'll season it, maybe marinate it, depending on your taste preference, and you'll cook this on a grill pretty much like it is. Once it's cooked to the doneness you want, you just want to kind of cut across the grain this way. And I mean, it's very tender.
Seasoning very well.
Very well. Take seasoning. Now, these things aren't real cheap. And if you remember from when we were cutting it out,
A lot to get to it.
it's a lot to get to it and not much to get from it. You know, I mean, we're sitting on, I'd say maybe 18, not even, maybe a pound, 16 ounces right here. We have two of those, 16 to 18 ounces out of that chuck with all that labor. So it's going to cost you a little bit, but I mean, it's worth it. It's a good.
Yeah, I think
Good
what
product.
we're trying to encourage folks is a lot of times we get hung up on the ones that we see most often, the ribeye steaks, the sirloin steaks.
Yep.
Venture into some of these. I mean, if the pocketbook allows you to do it, it's a really good eating experience. Would encourage you to give it a shot. A lot of us, we get kind of, I guess we get a little bit scared of some of those newer cuts, really not sure how to prepare them. But a piece of meat that you really can't mess up. Like I said, you can use it over some high heat. Just don't overcook that piece of meat. It's not very forgiving in terms of overcooking.
It'll overcook quick, and it's something, you know, my wife likes to get these because the portions are normally a little bit on the lighter side, and so it's a good product. They're really selling. They're still considered a new cut. They've been around for some time, but they're good.
So as we move on in, there's a lot of things you can do with that rib roast. That's where you could slow roast you some prime rib.
Right.
There's a lot of things. I mean, I know some folks during the Thanksgiving holidays, they'll even deep fry those things. They'll put them in a pot and deep fry them just like you would a turkey.
I've heard of people deep frying them. I kind of cringed a little bit, but I would try it. Because, you know, if you take your time with it and you don't overcook it, I would imagine it's going to be pretty phenomenal.
You could slow roast that. That would be just looking at the marbling of that piece of meat, that would be an excellent.
This is a small enough piece. Of course, we're talking about this is a ribeye roll. I left a little bit of tail on it. It's full of marbling. Not the largest loin eyes right here, but this is one if you want to make your own prime rib. You'll put some seasonings on it. You can get one of them balling bags, because prime ribs really most of the time are either cooked in a balling bag or in an oven in one of those cooking bags to retain and let it cook in its own juices. And you know, you season it up, marinate it, seal it up, cook it either in the oven, a balling bag, or maybe a crock pot, but it'll make excellent prime rib. And that's probably one of the most common things this time of year. People are starting to use these. And then again, we talked about if we left them rib bones on it, we'd call that a standing rib roast, a bone-in roast. You could cook that on a smoker and then finish it off in some foil with some low temperature, long time, and keep it rare. You know, keep it rare, and it's going to be really good. Along the same lines, just another version of that. This is one of the cuts. This is
those cuts you're starting to see more and more in the grocery store.
More of them. And this would be it's called a Tomahawk Steak. I didn't put enough handle on it when I removed the plate. But it's basically a French-style ribeye, but they call them a Tomahawk Steak. They're generally going to be cut pretty thick. The main reason why they're so thick is because instead of traditionally cutting just perpendicular to this loin to keep this rib bone in there, you have to cut it more of an angle. And they keep that bandsaw kind of wide to where you can get that rib bone in there, and it makes a larger steak. You got to be pretty hungry to eat these, but man, they're pretty good.
Absolutely.
They're pretty good.
Anytime you start getting into the tomahawks, I mean, that's basically the tomahawk. If you took that bone out of there, you got a ribeye steak. So,
yeah, bone-in ribeye steak.
Yep.
If you would cut the bone off it right here, it's a bone-in ribeye steak. You'll see those a lot of times, the tomahawk. and they'll leave a little bit more meat sometimes on the bone, but high quality product right here. This is just a ribeye steak. It's off this smaller rib, and it's just a ribeye steak. Most common probably thing that people like to get when talk about high quality beef products is a ribeye, maybe second to a tenderloin steak. But really,
these folks doing these steak cook-offs now, they've got me into reverse searing.
Reverse searing
steaks, and it's different.
Sous vide, you sous vide them?
Gives you a little bit more smoky flavor. You can sit there and cook real slow, get it up to about 100, 110 degrees internal temperature, and then finish it over high heat. It gives you a little bit different flavor instead of just searing it right off the bat, cooking it high really quick.
Right.
Cooking a little bit slower at the beginning, and then finish it off over some high heat. Really neat way to cook those ribeye steaks.
So guys have gotten into that. They'll take and sous vide them. They'll put them in a bag, and they'll put them in a little sous vide pot that'll keep them. Bring them to, like you said, at one temperature. But it's almost like prime rib. And they take them out, and they'll take a torch, pencil torch, hit them with a little propane torch and sear that offside. Or in some of the restaurants that have high volume of steak sales, they've gone to doing some of that where they get them to a really rare, and then they can finish them off real quick that way. So you're right, reverse searing is something that is new, and it's cool, and it's good, and it's good. And now they have these little smoke generators too, so if you wanted to do something like that, maybe in an oven or something, and you can take it, you can put it in a Ziploc bag, and they have these little smoke generators you can buy. They put a little sawdust, just like what we use in a smokehouse. Yep. Fill that Ziploc bag for a few seconds, and then you can't tell it didn't come off a grill.
Even the tubes you can put pellets in. Even if you don't have a pellet grill, you can buy those tubes that you can put the pellets into and get the same benefit from the smoke.
Now this is the tenderloin. We kind of got it out of sequence with the loin, but this came off the sirloin portion. This is the head. So this is where it ties in right there at the sirloin round region, and this would have went back towards the loin. And tenderloin steaks, cut them about 2 inches thick, grill them, wrap them in bacon. Wrap them in bacon.
Makes everything better, right?
You know the best way to make bacon good, right? Wrap it in bacon.
That's right.
But anyhow, you wrap that in bacon, or you can cook it as a little roast the same way, like you was talking about. You can actually reverse sear these a little bit. This is something that is the flavor profile is a little different. They don't have as much marbling in them as some of the other cuts that are right there next to them. This is definitely where the traditional beef flavor is found in a tenderloin. Short loin, we didn't break this one down, but what can we say? You cut this into T-bones, porterhouses.
Just real quick, show the different ends right there. Let's talk about what is the difference between, it's all coming out of the short loin. What's the difference between a T-bone steak and a porterhouse steak?
All right, so on this end, and it's a little short yet, the head of the tail of the tenderloin starts about right here. So this would be a T-bone steak without any tenderloin much left on it. You would chine this off. Generally, you'd start back maybe a couple inches, and that tenderloin on a T-bone is really small. When you get to the other end, closer to the sirloin, and this tenderloin muscle gets larger than 1.5 inches in diameter or in volume, then it's considered a porterhouse. All right, it's a higher end T-bone steak because not only are you getting this strip, which is very flavorful and tender, but you have the tenderloin in a larger portion of that tenderloin. So, bone-in steaks, this is probably my favorite, is a porterhouse steak.
While you're there, go ahead and talk a little bit about our strip steaks. Whether it's a New York strip or a Kansas City strip, we learned something new today.
Yeah. So jargon, a little jargon. So if we were to take this loin and remove the tenderloin out, and then remove this longissimus, and you'd get a boneless strip steak. All right, we've all seen we've seen New York strips, or we've seen Kansas City strips, and tail is, if you're in New York, anybody can get something from New York. So if you call it a Kansas City strip, people say, man, that's something different. I think that goes back to some of the days before travel was as easy as it is now. But, you name something just a little bit different. It's the same cut. A New York strip or Kansas City strip is pretty much the same cut. A lot of people like strip steaks. You can see that this muscle changes. This is the same muscle as this longissimus right here. This is closer towards the front of the animal, so that you can see on this side that it's more round in shape. All right, so this continues to go, and as it grows towards the tail, it changes a little bit. All right, it gets more elongated. That muscle changes. It's still a really tender cut. It still has some of those flavor profiles. So it just changes a little bit.
All right. You're getting towards, so we're moving towards the tail end of the animal, and in my opinion, you're getting into a lot of more of that, just a lot of flavor. Don't get me wrong, I love the ribeyes, the fillets, the tenderloins, but you start getting down into that sirloin, those strips. I just like that beef flavor. You get a lot of that good hearty beef flavor once you start getting down into those strips and T-bone porterhouse and into that sirloin.
Absolutely, and some of that it plays into. It's just remember we talked about how them animals put on fat front to back, and so you can see along this, there's more marbling on this rib side than there is on this porterhouse side in this muscle. And when you get further back, I'm not saying they're void of marbling. There's not as much marbling in there, so your beef flavor isn't blended as much with that fat type profile, and so it does have a more hearty beef flavor. And this is a steak that I think is underappreciated by a lot of folks. The sirloin steak is a fine steak. It's a really good value for your pocketbook, because they're not generally as expensive as some of those other ones, because there's a little bit less marbling in it. And they can be a touch tougher sometimes if they have some of the other associated muscles with them. Remember, you're getting back close to that power, but
got to back the heat down on them just a little bit.
Slow it down.
Them just near as fast and as high as you might with a ribeye steak or something like that. Slow them down a little bit.
But it definitely has a unique flavor. Don't overcook them, and they have a very unique flavor profile. That they are getting more rich in that beef flavor. And I had a couple different versions. You know, it changes. There's muscles change as they get further down. So this is just closer to the porterhouse end, and this is closer to the round end. Moving into the round, now we have these different roasts, and this is some of the things that we start talking about the holidays and getting together, or even just Sundays. You know, when everybody comes home to visit Mama. We have some roasts. Remember, these things are definitely going to be of the tougher variety. You can see in this eye round, there's coarser muscle bundles here, a lot of different texture here, still some flavor that's really good, and all of these we're going to have to cook in some type of slow environment and with some moisture. Sirloin tips probably a favorite of mine from a roast perspective.
Definitely mine. If I'm going to eat a roast, that's where it's good.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's deep, so you can, if you want to enhance it with some kind of flavor profiles, put some garlic or onion. If you want to stuff it with something, you can. Also, guys that are into these smoke clubs or whatever, and they're getting into making jerky and things like that, this is the cut you want. Really lean. You can slice it thin. You can add some seasoning to it or whatever and make a jerky to fast snacks around the house. Eye around, generally you'll see them in the grocery store probably cut in half. This is the weekday roast. This is the thing that you can put in the crock pot at lunchtime, and you're eating good tender products by supper. And then thinking along the lines of having large gatherings. This top round roast right here is something that is generally made in top round steaks, stew meat, maybe even making cutlets with it. It's really lean. It's got some connective tissue in it. But as a whole roast, if you have a really large family, a large gathering, this is something that you can cook and feed the masses, and you still have good beef flavor. It's going to be kind of uniform in texture and flavor profile through it, so that you can feed a good bit of people with it. You can make roast beef with it as well, where you can season it and make a roast beef type sliced product to make sandwiches or whatnot. But this is just something that's really good to cook for large crowds.
Well, Boo, we certainly appreciate it. I think it's very important for not only the folks watching this that are beef producers and understanding the role that they play Louisiana's a Carcass state. Those producers play a direct role in what the consumers are enjoying during the holidays, but also the consumers that may be watching this, and just helping them understand where some of these cuts come from, what are some of the things that affect that flavor profile that we're talking about. There's a lot of things that play into that, but
yeah,
just know that our cattlemen, I think, are doing their part. We were talking just the other day about the number of the animals that we're seeing now that are grading choice.
Absolutely.
On the federal level, and I think that goes back to the fact that our cattlemen are doing a better job selecting genetics to where we can get a carcass that looks like this.
Yeah, it's important, and you know, these prices that we see even at the local stockyards, those are all reflective of what the products in the packing houses are bringing. You know, there's a trickle down effect for there, absolutely. And everything that we do from the time we decide what two animals we want to pair has an effect on what the consumer sees. And the consumer doesn't necessarily get to see that a lot. And sometimes the cattlemen do. There's a lot of cattlemen that hadn't had the opportunity to see these products that they raise go through that system. And, you know, it's important. The cattlemen definitely in the state of Louisiana, but I think by and large in the United States have gotten into the beef business. You know, I don't want to say we're not cattlemen anymore, but we're getting into the beef business, which is what we're producing, and knowing what those products look like and end up like, it helps you down the line. You know, helps you down the line. So I'm glad to help.
We certainly appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, and I think we've definitely offered a good program for our consumers and our cattlemen for the state of Louisiana.
All right, if y'all will just give me one moment, let me get swapped back over here. Sorry, you can see my little family there for just a second. Okay, Mr. Boo, if you are still with us, are there any final tips and tricks you would like to give our listeners on selecting, you know, a cut or anything like that as they start to look at what they're going to do for their holiday meals, or even like you said, their Sunday meals?
I guess the biggest tip is don't get caught in that routine where, you know, you're gonna buy and attempt what you're comfortable with. Get out there and try some of the tougher things to cook, and don't be scared to venture out into some of the different types of cuts, which not many people are anymore. But you know, try a little bit of all of it. Sometimes it's a pleasant surprise, not, you know, getting involved in a cut you're not really used to working with, and then finding out, well, it wasn't too bad, and obviously it's a good product. All the beef products out there are something that I like, you know, I like to work with. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I mean, I was just going to say, I absolutely love that. I know when we were down there filming with you and I visited a little bit about the fact that my stepdad was at a meat market in the Houston area and picked up some hanger steaks, and we cooked those over Labor Day weekend. And I had heard of them, you know, but we had never eaten them. And my husband cooked them, and they were just fantastic. And so now that's what we're looking at having for one of our Christmas meals, as opposed to a roast or ribeyes are usually what we do for our go-to.
Yeah, there's some new cuts, but the hanger steak is basically just the tail of that diaphragm that's normally attached to at the base of the loin. There's not a lot of product there, but what's there is really tender and really flavorful. They used to call it butcher special because it ended up, you know, in the butcher's pot at home, because there's just not a lot that would come from it, and it's too good to grind up. But get out there and try some of these beef products, some of these larger roasts, or you know, some of the smaller type products that you haven't worked with, and just enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Like I said, completely agree with that. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I know it took a lot for you to make sure we got set up to do all of the filming that we needed. And I cannot tell you how wonderful it was. The content that you gave us, we are going to use not just for this webinar, y'all. We have got another 3 or 4 videos that Mr. Boo did for us to use for our Master Cattleman programs and other programming efforts as we move forward. So we want to say thank you again so much for all of that. And thank you. I know Mr. Craig's probably not on here, but Mr. Craig Gotro did all the video edits for this. And Boo's used to being in the meat lab, but Jason, Craig and I were kind of cold. So thank you, to you guys for bundling up and helping us get those videos. So we really appreciate you being with us, Boo, and helping to do that. Jason, it looks like we might have a question for Boo. Do you mind reading that and telling me what that is?
All right, Boo, here's the question. If I have a good young cow that falls out of the program because of infertility, what is the meat cutter's opinion of the quality of meat versus a good young steer under 24 months of age?
Actually, a lot of heifers go into the feeding program. I mean, a lot of the beef that we consume comes from heifers. Obviously, if she's been afforded the chance to go into the breeding program and falls out for whatever reason, then if you can hold her for a bit and feed her, you got to put that extra feed on them to get them to get a little bit more finish, because if they got enough finish to grade choice, that might be why they fell out the breeding program to begin with. But no, so you could put a little bit more feed on them and then utilize them. Yeah, you can run them through a plant and make some fine cuts. There's some products out there just like that. Some of the companies out there, I don't guess I need to name too many of them, but that actually do that. They take those cattle that don't quite make it, those heifers that don't make it into a breeding program, finish them off. It's a little bit older product from a physiological perspective, but they eat just fine. They normally have a lot of marbling.
Thank you. Jason, are there any other questions in the chat?
No, ma'am, that was the only one.
Okay, if y'all have any last minute questions, you can still get those into the chat. I'm going to take just a few minutes to get us, start to wrap us up here. So if you don't mind, we utilize your feedback on our programming efforts and moving forward with this. So we do have a brief survey for you. There's a couple of different ways to access that. One is if you open the camera on your phone and you view the QR code square here on the right with your camera, you should see a banner that will pop up at the top of your phone. You can click on that and it will take you to the survey. It is a 2-minute survey. We've tried to make it as brief as possible for y'all, but still get us all the content and everything that we need. I will also post a link to that survey in the video description on YouTube or in the podcast description, depending on how you are viewing this webinar or listening to this webinar. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us again today. Thank you to Jason and Boo for your help in this. I will have this recording posted online in the next few days. You can find that on the LSU AgCenter Livestock YouTube channel. So if you just search LSU AgCenter -Livestock on YouTube, that will pop up. It is also going to be put onto our Beef Brunch webpage. That is lsuagcenter.com/beef brunch, and you can find it under past webinars. Jason, have we had any other questions pop up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so our next beef brunch is going to be at 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, January 12th. We will have Dr. Christine Navarre with us, and she's going to talk a little bit about the shortage of food animal veterinarians and some things they're trying to do to overcome that. More information on that is posted on the Beef Brunch website under future webinars. Again, please don't forget, if you can take a couple minutes to do that survey for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And thank you all again. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. All of my contact information will be in the video and podcast description. So we hope that you have a very wonderful and Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year's, and eat a lot of beef.